We'll go ahead and open up the meeting for October 7th. If you folks would like to look at the minutes for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Is there any unfinished business? Anyone? Ryan?
Yeah, Chair Dietrich, we did have one item from last meeting where Commissioner Obermiller asked about the spirits and distilled spirits section.
Yeah.
And so I did go in and look that proposal up. So I do have some kind of follow-up information on that I could present to you guys right now.
Perfect.
And so that proposal was to classify distilled spirits 16% alcohol or above, whether you're storing, they were going to be an S1, and if you're a manufacturer, then it would be an F1, and with a 0 threshold on the sprinkler system. And so when I pulled up the proposal, the reason this proposal came at the ICC is that many code officials were classifying distilled spirits as a Class H, and so the industry kind of got together and set out what they thought should be the safety thresholds. Instead of being a Group H, they'd prefer that it would be an F1 or an S1, and the compromise that they came to was that there'd be a 0 square footage threshold for the sprinkler system. So it actually kind of came from a different spot than I did. I thought this was code driven. In watching the hearings, some of the people that actually spoke out against this proposal were code officials. The industry was in support of the amendment as we presented to you guys last meeting. So the second half of that question that Commissioner Obermiller asked was that what would be the threshold if I were to store, distilled spirits and I'm not actually, like a winemaker or I'm not into that classification. And so if we were to look at that and said, let's say you had a shop condo and we're just storing cases of wine, your threshold then really falls back to the MAQ table, and the 16% or above alcohol is labeled a Class 2 combustible liquid. So really the threshold is 120 gallons in. And so that would be the triggering point where we'd have to start looking at it as you either got to start separating this stuff out, or you could potentially be classified as an S1 storage of distilled spirits. So that's the follow-up to that question from the last meeting.
All right, thank you. If there's no other unfinished business, we'll move on to new business. And looks like Ryan, you're up first.
Yeah, we'll start with Chapter 12, and Trevor is going to be presenting.
Okay.
Good morning, Trevor Riscard, Deputy Fire Marshal. I'll be presenting chapters 12 through 26 of the IFC this morning. We'll start with chapter 12, Energy Systems. This chapter was new in the 2018 IFC and then expanded in the 2021 IFC. This has got the most significant changes out of the chapters I'll be covering. So starting with page 12-1, section 1203.1.2, fuel line piping protection. This added specific methods for piping protection. Page 12-2, section 1203.2.5, exhaust ventilation. This is a new section that states standby power shall be provided for mechanical exhaust ventilation systems as required in section 1207.6.1.2.1. The system shall be capable of powering the required load for a duration of not less than 2 hours. Section 1204 is a section that's devoted all the portable generators on pages 12-3 to 12-4 for the safe use of operation of portable generators. Page 12-4, section 1205.2 is solar photovoltaic power systems. This whole section has to do with solar panel arrays. This added an exception 3, finished roof areas that have photovoltaic systems that are removed during firefighting operations shall not expose firefighters to electric shock hazards. Page 12-5, Section 1205.3.3, smoke ventilation. On roofs that have smoke ventilation structures, an additional panel placement stipulation was added. And that stipulation is a pathway not less than 8 feet wide. Page 12-6, section 1205.5.1, vegetation control. A clear 10-foot base shall be maintained around the perimeter of ground-mounted photovoltaic arrays, non-combustible base of gravel, or a maintained vegetative surface, or a non-combustible base is required. On page 12-6, section 1206 had all the ESS, or the energy storage system information, removed. Section 1207 was added to cover ESS. Section 1206.1, the general stationary fuel cell power systems. The exception added here was temporary use of fuel cell powered electric vehicles to power a group R3 or R4 building while parked shall comply with section 1206.1.4. And the same exception was added in 1206.5 for residential use. Page 12-7, section 1206.14, group R3 and R4 fuel cell vehicle energy storage system use. The new section added states dwelling owners fuel cell powered electric vehicle to power R3 or R4 dwelling while parked in an attached or detached garage or outside shall comply with vehicle manufacturer's instructions and NFPA 70. So pages 12-7 to 12-20 is a new section. They really expanded on chapter 12 and then just made it easier to follow. So I'll give a brief summary of what we find in the 1207, and that's the electrical energy storage system, or ESS section. The requirements for energy storage systems have been reformatted and revised to better address the growing and changing technologies. The entirety of section 1207, which was section 1206 in the 2018 IFC, was reformed and replaced. The addition of ESS requirements into the 2018 code was an initial effort to address safety hazards associated with the increased use of lithium-ion batteries, capacitors, and other modern ESS technologies for a growing number of energy storage applications. Since the publication of the 2018 IFC, a significant amount of evaluation and testing by private and government stakeholders has occurred to better address the hazards and exposures associated with various types of ESS installations, technologies, and operations. So next I'll get into the summary of the new section. Section 1207.1.6 is added to address fire involving lithium-ion battery systems. Since lithium batteries have the potential to reignite hours or even days after initial extinguishment by the fire department, who cannot stay on scene indefinitely until the ESS is removed from the premises, the fire remediation requirement makes the owner responsible for sending mitigation personnel to the scene to take over the remediation process. New requirements in section 1207.2 include criteria on commissioning, decommissioning, maintenance, and testing requirements. Section 1207.3 addresses retrofitting existing ESSs and reuse or repurposing of electric vehicle batteries that are converted for ESS use in a building. This can only occur if the equipment is refurbished in accordance with UL 1974 and the use and installation is approved by the fire code official. Section 1207.5 identifies the specific protection requirements applicable for each type of battery technology. The requirements differ based on the exposure hazards, such as indoor versus outdoor, dedicated use buildings, remote locations, or rooftop installation. Table 1207.5 lists the maximum allowable quantities of energy storage allowed in a room or walk-in unit. All ESS rooms and walk-in units must be protected by an automatic fire extinguishment system. Section 1207.6.3 addresses explosion control in lithium-ion battery systems and other electrochemical ESS technology rooms. Section 1207.7.4 requires that rooms containing ESS be separated from the remainder of the building. The separation must be fire resistance construction with a minimum of a 2-hour rating. Section 1207.10 covers mobile ESS operations. Mobile ESS are regulated at their home facility where it is stored awaiting deployment and at the location where the mobile ESS provides temporary energy. Deployment is limited to 30 days with some exceptions. So that concludes Chapter 12. Chapters 13 through 19 are all reserved for future IFC expansion. So then we move on to Chapter 20. Chapter 20 is Aviation Facilities. There were no changes to Chapter 20. Chapter 21 is Dry Cleaning. There were no changes to Chapter 21. Chapter 22 is Combustible Dust Producing Operations. On page 22-1, section 2201.1 scope, it added 5 exceptions that apply to storage in group B or R occupancies, storage in group M, materials intended as building materials or for personal household use, storage of sealed containers at facilities not intended to use, handle, or generate the combustible dust, and for farm use. Page 22-1 to 22-4, section 2203, dust explosion prevention. It's a new section. Section was formerly labeled as Precautions. The entire Precautions section was replaced and added to page 22-4. Section 2204, dust explosion screening tests, is a new section. 2204.1, combustibility and explosivity tests. Where tests are required as part of the IBC, they shall be in accordance with section 5.4 of NFPA 652. 2204.2, samples shall be in accordance with section 5.5 of NFPA 652. Page 22-4, section 2205, standards. This is a new section. 2205.1, specific hazards standards. The fire code official is authorized to enforce additional industry or material specific provisions of the codes and standards listed in table 2205.1 to prevent and control dust explosions as applicable. Page 22-4, section table 2205.1, explosion protection standards, added standard NFPA 68 standards on explosion protection by deflagration venting, and NFPA 77 recommended practice on static electricity. Page 22-4, section 2205.1.1, dust hazard analysis, DHA. If DHA is required by the fire code official for new or existing facilities and operations, it shall be in accordance with NFPA 652. The DHA for existing facilities shall be in accordance with section 7.1.1 of NFPA 652. And that concludes chapter 22. Chapter 23 is motor fuel dispensing facilities and repair garages. Section 2303.1, location of dispensing devices, added a bullet point 6, such that fuel dispensing is in view of the attendant at attended self-service motor fueling dispensing facilities as required by section 2304.2.4. Page 23-1, section 2303.1 is amended by adding the following subsection number 7. Number 7, on new installations, dispensing devices used to fill portable containers with home heating fuels shall not be located on the same island where Class 1 liquids are dispensed. This is an existing amendment that we propose to continue. Page 23-2, section 2304.2.4, obstruction of view. The language changed from dispensing devices shall be in clear view to attendants shall have a direct line of sight to observe fueling dispensing operations, and added an exception allowing video monitoring to supplement direct line of sight where approved by the fire code official. Page 23-4, section 2306.1 is amended to read the following. Section 2306.1 general, storage of flammable and combustible liquids shall be in accordance with chapter 57 and section 2306.2 through 2306.3. See also Fargo Municipal Code section 9-0604. Fargo Municipal Code 9-0604 relates to the licensing of service stations and bulk oil dealers as per the auditor's office. Page 23-9, section 2308, compressed natural gas motor fuel dispensing facilities, or CNG. 2308.1, general, added that motor fuel dispensing facilities for CNG fuel shall also be in accordance with section 413 of the International Fuel Gas Code. Page 23-9, section 2308, compressed natural gas motor fuel dispensing facilities, added new 2308.2.3, residential fueling appliances shall be listed and installed in accordance with CSA ANSI NGV 5.1, manufacturer's installation instructions, and section 413 International Fuel Gas Code. Capacity shall not exceed 5 cubic feet per minute of natural gas. And then added a new 2308.2.4, vehicle fueling appliances for non-residential fueling appliances shall be listed and installed in accordance with CSA ANSI NGV 5.2, manufacturer's installation instructions, and section 413 of International Fuel Gas Code, and the capacity shall not exceed 10 cubic feet per minute of natural gas. Page 23-12, section 2309.4, dispensing into motor vehicles at hydrogen motor fuel dispensing facilities shall also comply with NFPA 2. Exception, filling of non-permanently mounted storage containers or tanks for motor fuel dispensing system testing purposes is permitted. Page 23-16, section 2311.8, repair garages for vehicles fueled by lighter than air fuels. If work that is not being performed on the fuel tank and is limited to exchange of parts and maintenance, increased amount of hydrogen that can be left in the tank from less than 200 cubic feet to less than 400 cubic feet. And that concludes chapter 23. Chapter 24 is flammable finishes. The only change to chapter 24 is in section 2404.3.3.6 size. Spray booths are no longer restricted to a maximum size of 1,500 square feet. Chapter 25, fruit and crop ripening. There were no changes to chapter 25. In chapter 26, fumigation and insecticidal fogging, there were no changes to chapter 26. So that concludes chapters 12 to 26. You want this left up here?
It's kind of worth noting as we work through some of these chapters in the fire code here that each one of these is really kind of a specialized, either hazardous materials or process. And a lot of these new requirements that you guys hear are because of new technologies that are coming on board. That whole ESS chapter has got a lot to do with like the Tesla batteries and using those batteries in your house, and the CNG. It's kind of if we were to get this technology in town, our codes would be ready to handle if you were going to fuel your car with compressed natural gas inside your facility. So that's why we see a lot of these changes. They're not necessarily new requirements on existing things. It's new technology that's coming out, and it's definitely one of the advantages of adopting the codes at the pace we do, because then at least we're ready to accept those new technologies. So with that, I'm going to continue here with chapters 27 through 35. Chapter 27 is Semiconductor Fabrication Facilities. These are a lot of specialized requirements for the hazardous materials they use to make chips and that type of stuff. Only one significant change here, page 27-7, table 2704.2.2.1, quantity limits for hazardous materials in a single fabrication area in a group H5 occupancy. And we do have a typo in this. It's a addition of a footnote stating that the quantity of class 3 water reactive solids in a single tool shall not exceed, and it should be 1 pound, not 21, so it's just a typo. That was the only change in chapter 27. Chapter 28 is the lumber yards and agro-industrial solid biomass and woodworking facilities. Page 28-3, section 2808.3, size of piles. There's deletion of an exception that allowed the increase of the pile size. Same page, section 2808.3.1, increase in pile or stack size. They added a new subsection addressing the increase in pile or stack size. An increase in pile size is allowed when a written protection plan is approved by the fire code official. Requirements for the fire protection plan include 10 requirements as opposed to 5 in the previous cycle. Page 28-3, section 2808.4, pile separation. This section expands on requirements for pile separation. 2018 edition required only separation by approved fire department access roads. The maximum pile sizes and distances between roads has been added in conjunction with the required access roads. Page 28-4, section 2810.2, site plan. This section cleans up the requirements for site plan submittal. Language is removed from the section and moved to the list of requirements. The 9 previous requirements are expanded to a list of 11. That's it for chapter 28. Chapter 29 is the manufacture of organic coatings. There were no significant changes in chapter 29. Chapter 30 is the industrial ovens chapter. There's also no significant changes in chapter 30. Chapter 31 is tents, temporary structures, and other membrane structures. Page 31-4. Section 3104.3, label. There's the addition of 5 requirements for the labeling of tents or membrane structures. The requirements were previously located in section 3104.4, certification. The requirements were rewritten and moved to section 3104.3. Same page, section 3104.4, affidavit. The title changed from certification to affidavit. Requirements for certification were rewritten and moved to section 3104.3, label. This section requires an affidavit requiring the information stated in 3104.3. Section 3106.2. Section 3106.2 general is amended to read as the follows. 3106.2 general, outdoor assembly events, and then we have a local amendment to add, with planned attendance exceeding 1,000 people, shall be in accordance with this section and section 403.12. Temporary structures erected for outdoor assembly events shall comply with this chapter. We're just trying to set a threshold there for when they have to comply with outdoor assembly events so that every small event isn't required to go through this section. We did have that in the last edition also. That completes chapter 31. Chapter 32 is high piled combustible storage. Page 32-12. Section 3205.1, storage layout plan maintenance. This is a new section requiring annual approval of storage layout and high pile storage occupancies. Changes to storage layouts are required to obtain approval from the fire code official. 32-12, section 3205.5, aisle maintenance. There's an addition of a new exception in high pile occupancies protected by approved automatic sprinkler systems. This exception allows for displays and wing stacks to protrude into aisles as long as they do not exceed 48 inches in height and do not reduce the aisle clear width to less than 48 inches. Page 32-15, section 3208.1.1, storage racks. This is a new section requiring the installation of storage racks to be in accordance with the IBC. Page 32-17, section 3209.4.1, manual activated shutdown. They added a new subsection stating the requirements for manual activated shutdowns in automated storage situations. 3209.4.2, automatic shutdown, is a new subsection expanding the requirements for automatic shutdown and automatic storage situations. This is for where like that big Amazon facilities where they got the robots running, so it's a way to shut those automated systems down. Page 32-17, 3210.1.1, alternative fire protection. A new subsection stating that automatic fire extinguishing systems in archives, vaults, and record storage rooms to be in accordance with NFPA 232. That completes chapter 32. Chapter 33 is fire safety during construction and demolition. On page 33-1, section 3303.1, program development and maintenance. Section 3303.1 is amended. We're proposing a local amendment that will read as follows. The owner or owner's authorized agent shall be responsible for the development, implementation, and maintenance of an approved written site safety plan establishing a fire prevention program at the project site applicable throughout all phases of construction, repair, alteration, or demolition work. We're looking to amend this and add, when required by the fire code official, the plan shall be submitted and approved before a building permit is issued. And so again, we're just trying to add this local amendment in so that we wouldn't have to have that written and submitted on every project. It would just be on the ones that it would be deemed necessary. So, you know, the site would still be required to comply with section 3303, but they wouldn't have to supply that at the time of building permit. Page 33-1, section 3303, owner's responsibility for fire protection. This section was moved from 3308 to 3303. Same page, program development and maintenance, section 3303.1. The section was rewritten to clarify that fire safety and prevention plan for construction sites must be submitted and approved before a building permit is issued. And again, we have that local amendment that we're looking at there. 3303.1.1, components of the site safety plan. New subsection stating the 13 requirements for the site safety plan for construction sites. 3303.2, site safety director. This section was moved from 3308.2. The section states the director is responsible to ensure compliance with the site safety plan referenced in 3303.1.1. Page 33-1, 33-2, section 3303.3, the daily fire safety inspection. This is a new section stating 10 new requirements for daily fire safety inspections on construction sites. The site safety director is responsible for completion and documentation of inspections and must be readily available for review. 3303.3.1, violations, a new subsection stating failure to conduct, document, and maintain documentation of the site safety plan is an unlawful act in accordance with section 112.1, and the HJ has the authority to issue stop work orders in accordance with section 113. Page 33-2, section 3303.4, qualifications. This section was moved from 3308.3. The section changed from pre-fire plans to qualifications. Section states the site safety director is required to acquire training specific to their role. The training and qualifications are required to be submitted to the fire code official for review. Page 33-2, section 3303.5, fire safety requirements for buildings of type 4A, type 4B, and 4C construction. That's the new heavy timber, high-rise, and mid-rise. The new section requires 4 passive fire safety requirements for buildings of those types of construction designed to be greater than 6 stories above grade plane. Page 33-3, section 3305.5.1, Firewatch during construction. This section was moved from 3304.5.1, and the section adds requirements for Firewatch during non-working hours during construction for buildings exceeding 40 feet and multi-story buildings exceeding 50,000 square feet per story. 3305.5.2, Firewatch personnel. Section was modified to add clarification to requirements for Firewatch personnel. Page 33-3, section 3305.5.2.1, duties. It's a new section stating the required duties for Firewatch personnel. The next subsection, point 2, training, is a new section stating the training requirements for those same personnel. There's an additional section for means of notification that has the required means of notification for Firewatch personnel. It's page 33-3, section 3305.3, Firewatch location and records. That section was modified and moved from 3305.5.3. 3305.5.4 Firewatch records is a new section separating the requirements for Firewatch records from the previous location that was in the Firewatch requirements. So this is kind of just more reformatting. 3305.9 separations between construction areas on page 33-3 and 33-4. It's a new section requiring the separation of construction areas and occupied areas of buildings in type 1 and type 2 buildings. This section also stated the requirements for the types of materials to be used in the separations. Page 33-5, water supply for fire protection. This section was moved and expanded. It was previously located at 3312. Same page, 3313.1, when required. It's a new section requiring an approved water supply for construction sites that will be using combustible materials. Again, in the city of Fargo, we don't issue building permits until the sites have already been platted and developed, so most of these things are taken care of for us prior to that. Page 33-5, 3313.2, combustible building materials. New section stating requirements for fire flow and hydrants on construction sites when combustible building materials are present. Same page, 3313.3, vertical construction of type 3, 4, and 5 construction. New section stating the requirements for fire flow hydrants prior to commencing vertical construction of those types of buildings. Page 33-5, section 3313.3.1, fire separation up to 30 feet. New subsection stating the water or fire flow requirements on construction sites where the fire separation is less than 30 feet from property lines, structures, or properties that can be built upon. 3313.3.2, fire separation up to 30 up to 60 feet, has the water and fire flow requirements for where the separation is between 30 and 60. And the next section is for when it's 60 or greater. 33-5, section 3313.4, vertical construction of type 1 and 2 construction. It's a new section stating that upon arrival of combustible materials, water supply shall be in accordance with 3313.2. Additional water supply for fire flow not required prior to commencing vertical construction of type 1 and 2 buildings. Same page, 3313.5, standpipe supply. New section stating that buildings requiring standpipes in accordance with 3314, a water supply providing a minimum of 500 gallons per minute shall be provided. A fire hydrant will be required within 100 feet of the FTC. That finishes for fire safety during construction and demolition. The next chapter is chapter 34, tire rebuilding and tire storage. There were no significant changes to that chapter. Chapter 35 is welding and other hot work, and there's no significant changes to that chapter. Deputy Fire Marshal Garvey will cover our next chapters, and if there's a point that you want to break, you can, or we can keep going too.
Is good.
Okay.
Continue.
Mine's very short here. Jamie Garvey. I got 5 chapters here. Chapter, the first 2 here, 36 and 37. Chapter 36 is marinas. We did not have any significant changes there. Chapter 37, combustible fibers. There were no changes to chapter 37. Chapter 38 here, the higher ed laboratories. This is the second cycle that we've had this one adopted. Last time we went through it, we brought this in as a new chapter. The only change that we have here is page 38 for table 3805.4, design a number of control areas in existing non-sprinkler laboratories, Note E. And it now clarifies that table 3805.4 shall be applied to 25% of the MAQs in table from the hazardous materials, 5003.1.1 for class 4 oxidizers and pyrophorics. And then both tables apply. So really what this means in layman's terms is before we adopted this new chapter last time, they could only have of a pyrophoric, they couldn't have anything in a non-sprinklered building. They couldn't have any pyrophorics in a non-sprinklered building. This chapter gave them a pathway to have that brought in. But now instead of an MAQ of 4, it says you only get 25% of that. So you only get 1 pound. But then if we go up in elevation to like the 4th floor, both tables apply. So then you'd only get a 1/4 of a pound. So when I first started inspecting these buildings, they got nothing. If I found any pyrophorics, it's a problem. And now it's just saying how we limit it to a very small quantity. That's all we have for chapter 38. 39 is processing and extraction facilities. This is also the second cycle with this chapter being added to the IFC. And the only change that we have here is page 39-1, the gas detection system. Gas detection system shall comply with new section 916. So it's pointing back and saying that we have the gas detection system needs to be in compliance with section 916. And then the new chapter, and this is my last one here. The new chapter is the storage of distilled spirits and wines. We already kind of got some clarification here from Fire Marshal Erickson. This is providing specific requirements for the storage of distilled spirits and wines. And now he's added that that's once they meet the maximum allowable quantity charts, then that's when this would kick in. So page 40-1 gives us precautions against fire. It's section 4003. It requires a means of spill control, ventilation, and controls of source of ignition and lightning protection. Page 40-1, section 404 talks about the storage. Storage requirements state that only items related to beverage storage may be stored in the bulk storage areas. So once this chapter kicks in, you can't have mixed commodities with your bulk storage of alcohol with a higher alcohol content. Also, page 40-1, section 405, fire protection, requires automatic sprinkler system and portable fire extinguishers in these areas. And then the last thing, also page 40-1, is they need to have signage. This is section 4006, requires hazard identification signs per NFPA 704 so that when our responders are coming to one of those areas, they understand what they're walking into. That is all I have unless you guys have questions for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Brett Berg. I am going to be presenting chapters 50 through 60. Chapter 50, page 50-1, section 5001.1 scope. They changed some language in exceptions 1, 2, and 10. This simply is just making things easier to understand and creating less misinterpretation. They added exceptions 12 through 17, directing to the correct code of standard, makes the codes easier to follow. Page 50-9, table 5003.1.13, it's a maximum allowable quantities per control area. The only change here is that class 4 organic peroxide quantities are now not limited for any use type in that table. There's a typo here. It's actually page 5021, not 5012. It's section 5004.3, ventilation. They added exception 2. 2 is storage areas for medical gases, complying with chapter 53. Page 5013, section 5003.7.4, respiratory therapy. They added in group I2 and ambulatory care facilities within areas with respiratory therapy services, sources of ignitions shall be regulated in accordance with NFPA 99. Page 5013, section 5003.8.3.3. The number of control areas per floor within a building shall be in accordance with table 5003.8.3.2. For the purposes of determining the number of control areas within a building, each portion of a building separated by one or more firewalls complying with section 706 of the International Building Code shall be considered a separate building. Page 5014, table 5003.8.2, detached building required. They added a new footnote for D for pyrophoric gases. That footnote reads, detached buildings are not required for gases in gas rooms that support H5 fabrication facilities where the gas room is separated from other areas by a fire barrier with a fire resistance rating of not less than 2 hours, and the gas is located in a gas cabinet that is internally sprinklered, equipped with continuous leak detection, automatic shutdown, and is not manifolded upstream of pressure controls. The gas supply is limited to cylinders that do not exceed 125 pounds water capacity in accordance with DOT-N 49 CFR 173.192 for a hazard zone A toxic gases. Questions? Page 5018, table 5003.11.1, maximum allowable quantity per indoor-outdoor control area in groups M and S occupancies. They added a new footnote, footnote K. The maximum allowable quantity of consumer products shall be increased to 10,000 pounds, where individual packages are in the original sealed containers from the manufacturer, and the toxic classification is exclusively based on the LC50 threshold, and no other hazardous materials classifications apply. That's it for Chapter 50. Chapter 51 is aerosols. Page 51.1, Section 5101.1, they added new language addressing aerosol products, aerosol cooking spray products, and plastic aerosol 3 products. Page 51-2, Section 5104.1.2, plastic aerosol 3 products. Plastic aerosol 3 products shall be defined as those that meet one of the following criteria. 1. Base product does not have a fire point where tested in accordance with ASTM D92, and there is not more than 10% by weight flammable propellant. 2. Base product does not sustain combustion as tested in accordance with DOTN 49 CFR 173, Appendix H, and there is not more than 10% by weight flammable propellant. 3. Base product contains 50% by volume or less of flammable and combustible water miscible alcohols in an aqueous mix. There is not more than 10% by weight of flammable propellant. That is it for Chapter 51. No changes to 52. Chapter 53 is compressed gases. Page 53.6, Section 5306.11, training. Personnel who handle medical gases and associated equipment and cylinders shall be trained on the use, safe handling, and associated hazards. Chapter 54 is corrosive materials. There's no significant changes. Chapter 55 is cryogenic fluids. There's no changes there as well. Chapter 56 is explosives and fireworks. The only real significant change here is page 56.1, 5601.1.3, The possession, manufacture, storage, handling of fireworks are prohibited. And then it just refers us to a clarification for exception 4, denoting that the 2006 edition of 1124 should be used. So. 56-14, there's a typo there. It's page 5614, section 5606.1. Indoor storage and display of black powder, smokeless propellants, small arms primers, small arms ammunition, and now commercial reloading shall comply with this section and NFPA 495. The following sections all apply to that new commercial reloading. Page 5616, section 5606.6, commercial reloading of small arms ammunition shall comply with 5606.6.1 through 5606.68. 5606.6.1, electrical areas, areas within 3 feet of reloading equipment shall be Class 1, Division 2, and Group A type. 5606.6.2, exhaust fans, squirrel cage blowers shall not be used for exhausting hazardous fumes, vapors, or greases. Only non-ferrous fan blades shall be used for fans located within the ductwork and through which hazardous materials are exhausted. Motors shall be located outside of the duct. 5606.6.3, workstations. Workstations shall be separated by a distance, barrier, or other approved alternatives, so that the fire in one station will not ignite a material in another workstation. 5606.6.4, personal limits. The number of occupants in each process building and in each magazine shall not exceed the number necessary for proper conduct of production operations. 5606.6.5, approved containers. Smokeless powder shall be kept in its original container. 5606.6, static controls. The work area shall be provided with approved static controls. 5606.6.7, waste disposal. Approved receptacles with covers shall be provided for each location for disposing of waste material and debris. The waste receptacles shall be emptied and cleaned as often as necessary, but not less than once each day or at the end of each shift. 5606.8, safety rules. General safety rules and operating instructions governing particular operations or process conducted at that location shall be available at each location. That concludes the significant changes for Chapter 56. Chapter 57, Flammable and Combustible Liquids. Section 5701.2, non-applicability. There was a change of language in 10 that creates less confusion. They added 12 and 13. 12 is application and release of a pesticide and agricultural products and materials intended for use in weed abatement, erosion control, soil amendment, or similar applications where applied in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions and label directions. 13, the off-site transportation of flammable or combustible liquids where in accordance with the DOT regulation. Page 5711, section 5704, 2, 9, 6, 1, locations where above-ground tanks are prohibited is amended to read as follows. Locations where above-ground tanks are prohibited. Storage of Class 1 and 2 liquids in above-ground tanks outside of buildings is prohibited within the limits established by the law as the limit of districts in which such storage is prohibited. Above-ground tanks with a capacity exceeding 660 gallons outside of buildings shall be installed only in areas zoned industrial or limited industrial and shall be located at least 300 feet from all non-industrial zone districts. Above-ground tanks outside of buildings in all non-industrial zone districts shall not exceed 660 gallons in individual capacity or 1,320 gallons in aggregate capacity, and tanks outside of buildings used for dispensing shall be listed and labeled as protected above-ground tanks in accordance with UL 2085. This is a long-standing regulation that was in the Land Development Code to restrict above-ground tanks and dispensing to limited industrial areas. The amendment is adjusted to allow smaller tanks for dispensing in non-industrial areas. All tanks used for dispensing in non-industrial areas are going to be required to be UL 2085 rated. 5704-211-421 location. The leak detection panel status shall be enunciated at an approved on-site location. Page 5714, section 5704-213-14, tanks abandoned in place. This is a continuation of a previous amendment. That amendment reads 7. Site assessment is required to determine if there are any spills, leaks, or discharge from a tank system. Records of the site assessment shall be kept on site of tank location. Page 5729, section 5705-3751, ventilation. This is also a continuation of a previous amendment. The exception to section 5705-3751 is amended to read as follows. Exception 1, where natural ventilation can be shown to be effective for materials used or dispensed or mixed. When approved by the chief, continuous ventilation may be provided for 1 complete air change per hour. If supplemented with mechanical ventilation designed to provide for complete air change 6 times per hour. The non-continuous ventilation equipment and any lighting fixtures shall be operated by the same switch located outside of the door. Page 5741, section 5707.1.1, approval required. This is a new section, new technology, mobile fueling. Mobile fueling operations shall not be conducted without first obtaining a permit and approval from the fire code official. Mobile fueling operations shall occur only at approved locations. The fire code official is authorized to approve individual locations or geographic areas where mobile fueling is allowed. Page 5741, 5707.2, mobile fueling vehicle. An on-demand mobile fueling vehicle shall be that which is utilized in on-demand fueling operations for dispensing of class 1, 2, or 3 liquids into the fuel tanks of motor vehicles. 5707.2.1, mobile fueling vehicle classifications. An on-demand mobile fueling vehicle shall be characterized as one of the following. Tier 1, mobile fueling vehicle. A tank vehicle that complies with NFPA 385 and has a chassis-mounted tanks where the aggregate capacity does not exceed 1,600 gallons. Tier 2, mobile fueling vehicle. A vehicle with 1 or more chassis-mounted tanks or containers that do not exceed 110 gallons in capacity with an aggregate capacity that does not exceed 800 gallons or the weight capacity of the vehicle in accordance with DOT-N. Tier 3, mobile fueling vehicle. A vehicle that carries a maximum aggregate capacity of 60 gallons of motor fuel in metal safety cans listed in accordance with UL 30 or other approved metal containers not to exceed 5 gallons in capacity. 5707.2.2, mobile fueling vehicle requirements. Each mobile fueling vehicle shall comply with local, state, and federal requirements, as well as the following. Mobile fueling vehicles with chassis-mounted tank in excess of 110 gallons shall comply with the following requirements of 5706 and NFPA 35. Mobile fueling vehicle and its equipment shall be maintained in good repair. 3. Safety cans and approved metal containers shall be secured to the mobile fueling vehicle except when in use. 4. Fueling of motor vehicle from tanks or containers mounted in a trailer connected to a mobile fueling vehicle shall be prohibited. 5707.4, mobile fueling areas. This had language changed for clarification. 5704.1, separation. During fueling, the point of connection to the vehicle being fueled shall not take place within 25 feet of buildings, lot lines, property lines, or combustible storage. Mobile fueling vehicles shall not park within 10 feet of buildings, lot lines, property lines, or combustible storage. Exception 2, the point of fueling shall not take place within 10 feet of buildings, lot lines, property lines, or combustible storage where mobile fueling vehicle has an approved vapor recovery system or is servicing vehicles with onboard refueling vapor recovery. 5707.4.3 electrical equipment. Mobile fueling shall not occur within 20 feet of electrical equipment located within 18 inches of the ground unless such electrical equipment is rated Class 1 Division 2 hazardous locations in accordance with NFPA 70. 5707.5.1 dispensing hoses and nozzles. Where equipped, the dispensing hose shall not exceed 50 feet in length. The dispensing nozzles and hoses shall be approved and listed typed. Where metal-to-metal contact cannot be made between the nozzle and the fill opening, a means for bonding the mobile fueling vehicle to the motor vehicle shall be provided and employed during fueling operations. 5707.5.2 breakaway device. A listed breakaway device shall be provided at the nozzle. Added the new exception. Mobile fueling vehicles equipped with an approved brake interlock tied to the nozzle holder that prohibits movement of the mobile fueling vehicle while the nozzle is removed from its holder or tied to the delivery of fuel that prevents activation of the pumping system. 5707.5.3 shutoff valve and fuel limit. Mobile fueling vehicles shall be equipped with a listed shutoff valve assembly and a fuel limit switch set to a maximum of 30 gallons. 5707.6.3 safety cones. Safety cones or other visual barriers shall be employed as warning devices to highlight the vehicle fueling area. 5707.6.4 vehicle lights. The mobile fueling vehicle flasher lights shall be in operation while dispensing operations are in progress. 5707.6.5 nighttime deliveries. Nighttime deliveries shall be made only in areas deemed adequately lighted by the fire code official. That is the end of changes to Chapter 57. Chapter 58, flammable gases and flammable cryogenic fluids. This is largely a continuation of an amendment we already have. 5806.2, limitations, is amended to read as follows. 5806.2, storage of flammable cryogenic fluids in stationary containers outside of buildings is prohibited within the limits established by law as the limits of districts in which such storage is prohibited. Stationary containers shall be installed only in areas zoned industrial or limited industrial and shall be located at least 300 feet from all non-industrial zoning districts. Chapter 59, there are no changes, and Chapter 60, there are no changes.
Okay, we're really pretty close to the end here, but we'll take you through the last few chapters, and then we do adopt 2 appendix. So Chapter 61 is liquefied petroleum gases. Page 61-2. Section 6103.2.1.6 is amended. We amend the use with self-contained torch assemblies. Portable LP containers are allowed to be used to supply approved self-contained torch assemblies or similar appliances. Such containers shall not exceed a water capacity, and we are amending the 2.5 pounds to a 12-pound container. This is typically like a jeweler's torch. 61-2, section 6104.2 is also amended. 6104.2 is the maximum capacity within established limits. Within the limits established by law restricting the storage of liquefied petroleum gas for protection of heavily populated or congested areas, the aggregate capacity of any one installation shall not exceed 2,000 gallons. We are adding an amendment that unprotected tanks with a water capacity exceeding 2,000 gallons shall be installed only in areas zoned industrial or limited industrial and shall be located at least 300 feet from all non-industrial zone districts. This just clarifies our language for the LPG storage and puts the same restrictions that we're doing for all the other flammable above ground tanks. It's an existing amendment that we'd like to continue. 61-5 page, and then section 6110.1 temporarily out of service. LP gas containers not in service changed from temporarily out of service to removed from service, so that's really just some language change there. And then 6110.2 permanently out of service. The LP gas containers not in service is changed from permanently out of service to removal from site. So it's just requirements that when they're done using it, that they gotta remove the tanks. That's it for chapter 61. Chapter 62 is the organic peroxide section. There were no significant changes in that chapter. Chapter 63 is the oxidizers, oxidizing gases, and oxidizing cryogenic fluids. Page 63-2. Table 6303.1.4, the storage of class 1, 2, and 3 oxidizer liquids and solids. The table is expanded from class 1 to class 1, 2, and 3 limits with MAQs indicated for each class. The addition of footnote C reads, the maximum storage height in non-sprinklered buildings is limited to 6 feet. In sprinklered buildings, see NFPA 400 for storage heights based on ceiling sprinkler protection. There's an addition of footnote D to read that the maximum quantity per building varies. See chapter 40 for control areas and MAQs. Page 63-3, table 6304.1.5, parenthetical 1, storage of class 2 oxidizer liquids and solids. The control area storage section was removed from this table. This next subsection, storage of class 3 oxidizers, liquids and solids. The control area storage section was also removed from that table. So those are the only changes in chapter 63. Chapter 64 is the pyrophoric materials. There were no significant changes in that one. Chapter 65 is pyroxylin, the cellulose nitrates plastics. This is like the old film reels. There's no changes in that chapter. Chapter 66, unstable reactive materials. Again, no significant changes in that chapter. Chapter 67, water reactive solids and liquids, no changes. Chapter 68 through 79 are reserved in the fire code for future chapters. Chapter 80 is the reference standards. So these are the standards that we can go to that are referenced in the IFC. You'll notice that there are some bars in here, but typically the only changes in here are they're going to the next edition for the standard. So you have in your packet where that's been kind of called out for you, but I don't know that we probably need to read through those. So that finishes the chapters of the IFC. We do adopt 3 appendix, and that is Appendix B, fire flow requirements for buildings. This Appendix B and C are really, we adopt because that brings us into compliance with the ISO requirements that the insurance office brings down. And so Appendix B, page B-1, fire flow requirements for building is adopted and enacted in its entirety. Page B-1, Appendix B, fire flow requirements for building. Just the reason we adopt this, like I said, is for allows the calculations of the maximum or the minimum fire flows and coordinates that with the ISO requirements. So there's no significant changes between what was in the 2018 to what's in the 2021 edition here. Appendix C. Appendix C, fire hydrant locations and distribution is adopted and enacted in its entirety. Appendix C specifies the number and location of hydrants to meet the required minimum fire flow that we just determined in Appendix B. And there are no significant changes between what was in the 18 and what's in the 21 for that appendix also. Appendix D is the fire apparatus access roads. Page D-1, Appendix D, fire apparatus access roads is adopted and enacted in its entirety. Page D-1, section D-103.1, access road with a hydrant. D-103.1 is hereby deleted in its entirety. We find that we don't need that. If you see the picture right below there, it kind of bumps the road out. We don't believe that extra width of road is required at the hydrants. We haven't had an issue with that. Section D 105.1, where required. This section, they added a new exception of aerial access road requirements for type 1A, type 1B, or type 2A construction that are fully sprinklered and have a standpipe to the roof. So the aerial access road requirement is required for buildings where we need to get the ladder truck and be able to get up on the roof. The type building construction there is typically your high rise where we would not use that anyway. We need to switch to an interior firefight. And so they added a change in the code to allow that to be exempted. That concludes all the sections of the fire code. If there's anything anybody wants to revisit, otherwise we can move to the next agenda item.
One question I had, Ryan, was on when you're going to require plans before permit. Do you have some type of table to do that, or is it going to be in your initial review? If you find that you want additional information, you're going to ask for it, or how's that going to work?
Yeah, so, and you know, this kind of came up in the last cycle too, because they started adding some of this requirements for fire safety during construction due to some of the large fires they've had around the country, you know, when they're framed up but not yet sheetrocked.
Correct.
We don't have a policy in place as of yet. We haven't, quite honestly, we haven't required that as a condition of permit. You know, it's typically something that we've handled on site if it becomes an issue. We could look at setting a line, you know, drawing a threshold for that and then requiring it. My expectation is if we don't have that policy, it's probably going to be handled during construction where we either get complaints or driven by incidents. So right now we don't have a policy, no.
Okay, sounds good. Any other questions for Ryan? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to move on, or do you guys want to take a break first, or ready to go? Okay. Chris would like a break, so we'll take a short 5-minute break, and then we will resume.
I'm Kevin Coskella, mechanical inspector. Yeah, okay. We're gonna go with International Field Gas Code. And Chapter 1, no significant changes. 101.1 amendment has not changed. We're not changing that. 103.4 amendment. We are not changing anything with that. And 106.6.2 amendment. No changes. We are keeping that amendment. 106.6.3 amendment. No changes. 303.3 amendment. We are keeping that amendment. 304.6.1 amendment. No wait, chapter 202 definitions. No significant changes in that. And then, yeah, 303.3 amendment. No changes. 304.6.1 amendment. No changes. With the figures 304.6.1, they're deleted and we are not changing any of that. 304.6.2 amendment, no changes. And 304.11 amendment, no changes. 307.2 added text. 307.2 page 3-9. Text added. 3.7.2. Text added. The termination of concealed condensate piping shall be marked and to indicate whether the pipe is connected to the primary drain or to a secondary drain. Excuse me here. Oh, 7.2. (4-2), page 4-2. Text added. And that's 307.2. Text was added. The termination of concealed condensate pipe shall be marked to indicate whether the pipe is connected to the primary drain or to the secondary drain. And page 402, I'm right there. Additional, okay. Or 2.7. Yeah, number 2 was added. The pipe is joined by fittings listed to ANSI LC4 CSA 6.32, installed in accordance with the manufacturer's installation instructions. 403 section 403.3 amendment. Staff recommends to continue. Section 403.8.3. That is page 4-40. is 403.8.3. Some text was added for that. Some text just for the threaded joint compound was added for that. And 403.10.1.1 amendment. The staff has recommended to continue that. And 403.10.1.1, that is continued from, that's part of the amendment. Yeah. In section 403.10.4 amendment, staff recommends to continue with that. And section 406.4 amendment, staff recommends to continue. And section 406.4.1, staff recommends to keep the amendment. We're just going over a bunch of amendments right here, but you know that we are going to continue. And section 408.2, staff recommends continue. Section 411.2, staff recommends continue the amendment. Section 415.1, staff recommends to continue that amendment. Section 501.12, staff recommends to continue that amendment too. Moving on to section 5 here, or I mean chapter 5, on page 5-5. Section 503.5.6.1, chimney liner. Remove the exception. There was an exception there for chimney liners where we are putting that you need a chimney liner with gas appliances. That will be coming up here in the future here on the IMC. And section 503.5.3 amendment, staff recommends to continue. I'm sorry, is there any questions so far or any comments? 503.5.3 amendment, staff recommends to continue. 503.5.6.1, staff recommends to continue the amendment. A lot of amendments, not too many changes. In section, well, this is section 503.8. Pages. Oh, yeah, there's a, okay, 503.8. There's a new table. That is a new exception. The clearance in table 503. 503.8 shall not apply to the combustion air intake of a direct vent appliance. The clearances of table 503.8 shall not comply with, yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. Table 308, yes, that was added. Table 308 was added for, I like this table. It's really, it clarifies a lot of things from before what we did have, but with the old table. Any questions with the table? Page 512. Section 503.10.7. Connectors conjunction. Where vent connectors are joined together, the connection shall be made with a T or Y fitting. That, I believe, is a manufactured fitting instead of a okay, page, I guess that's it for section 5. Chapter 5, I should say. Chapter 6. Page 6-4. Termination locations. 614.4.1. There was some added. Yeah, this was all added. This is a whole new section here. Termination locations. Exhaust duct terminations shall be in accordance with the dryer manufacturer's installation instructions, where the manufacturer's installation instructions do not specify a termination location. The exhaust duct shall terminate not less than 3 feet in any direction of any openings into the building, including openings and ventilation soffits. So, yeah, I mean, with dryers, especially in residential, the dryers, they're running them out the soffits, so that 3 feet on each side would have to be blanked out in a ventilated soffit. So that we're finding that in residential in the new houses, they're running them right out the soffit, and you got a ventilated soffit, and it goes right back up into the attic space and creates problems, moisture problems. So, yeah. So they're being a little more it's a whole new section there. Page 6-4. That's what we are on. New section. Oh, domestic booster fans shall not be installed in dryer. Not be installed in dryer exhaust systems. Wait, that is not right. Yeah, domestic dryer exhaust systems. No booster fans are allowed. And there's a new section on the same page, 614.7.1. Closet installation, where a closet is designed for the installation of clothes dryers. An opening shall have an area of not less than 100 square inches for makeup air. Shall be provided in the closet enclosure. Or makeup air shall be provided by another approved means, which is outside air, I guess, or a makeup air system. Let's move closet. Okay. Section 614.8.2 amendment, staff recommends to continue. Section, page 6-7. As an addition to this, 618.6, furnace plenums and air ducts, addition to the section. Return air shall not be taken from a mechanical room containing the furnace. So basically, well, and that includes, installing or installing a furnace, say like in some of these apartments have closet. They're basically a closet where they put the furnaces, and they will pull the return out of that closet. But you cannot do that. You have to duct the return out of the closet and seal the return duct. It's really to clarify that. It's plenum air duct 618.6. Really, that's to clarify that whole section there. Section 618.6. That's what I just did. Section 621. That is an amendment that staff recommends to continue. Page 6-8. Exception removed. That would be exception 2 was removed. That's 623.2. Exception is removed on that. Chapter 7, no significant changes. And I believe that's all I got on that. Did I skip anything on that? Gas and hydrogen systems. Just no significant changes. Yep, that would be it for the IFGC. Any questions on any of this, or? Okay. I'm just gonna get a quick drink of water, and I'm gonna grab the IMC. International Mechanical Code. Chapter 1, no significant changes. Chapter 2, no significant changes.
Kevin,
Yeah.
for chapter 1, do we want to go through those amendments?
Huh?
For chapter 1, do we want to go through those amendments?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I'm gonna go through that, but
Okay.
there's no, yeah, I guess I should have, skipped 2, saying there's no significant changes, but.
No, that's okay. Just wanted to remind you.
Yep, okay. Yeah, okay. Section 101.1, amendment, staff recommends to continue. Section 103.1, staff recommends to continue this amendment. Section 103.4, staff recommends to continue this amendment. Section 106.4.8, staff recommends continue the amendment. Section 106.5.2, staff recommends to continue this amendment. Section 106.5.3, staff recommends to continue this amendment. That would conclude with chapter 1. And chapter 2, no significant changes. We'll go over the amendments. Section 201.3, staff recommends continue this amendment. And that was it for the amendments in chapter 2. And chapter 3. Section 305.4, staff recommends to continue this amendment. Condensate. Page 3-7. Section 307.2.1.1. This is, yeah, this whole section this is a whole new section here. Condensate drain shall not directly connect to any plumbing drain, waste, or vent pipe. Condensate drain shall not discharge into plumbing fixtures other than a floor sink, floor drain, trench drain, mop sink, hib drain, standpipe, utility sink, or laundry sink. Condensate drains connections to a lavatory Y branch tailpipe or to a bathtub overflow pipe shall not be considered as a discharge to a plumbing fixture except where discharge to the grade outdoors. The point of discharge of the condensate drain shall be located within the same occupancy tenant space dwelling unit as the source of condensate. And then if you look at 307.2.2, they just rearranged some of the verbiage on that. That's not on here, but 307.2.2 amendment, staff recommends to continue. Section 402, okay, that was, we're going to chapter 4. And there's one amendment we're gonna Okay, section 401.2, page 401. Staff recommends to discontinue this amendment. That's 401.2. So we are accepting in the IMC as written. So we're going to discontinue that amendment. If any questions on that? That's ventilation requirements. You know, with I know when they put this amendment in, they had issues with supply, and just to get, now we're going with the energy code. I mean, everything is pretty much caught up with the ventilation requirements and then residential and so that we find that there's really no reason to continue that amendment. Any questions on that? Oh, good, okay. Page 401, we're still on 401. 401.4. Note 3 was added to text. Okay, where is it now? Okay. Note 3. Intake openings shall be located not less than 3 feet below contaminated sources where such sources are located within 10 feet of the opening. Separation is not required between intake air openings and living spaces, exhaust air openings of an individual dwelling unit or sleeping unit where an approved factory-built intake exhaust combination fitting is used to separate the air streams in accordance with manufacturer's installation instructions. So, yeah, any questions on that? It's manufactured fitting that they're talking about. And the same change is going to be on page 5-1, section 501.3.1. Page 402, section 403.1. Oh, that's an amendment that staff recommends to continue. Yeah. Page 5-9. Oh, that's it for chapter 4. So we're going to chapter 5. Page 509, section 504.4.1. This section, this section is a new section. Termination locations. Exhaust duct termination shall be in accordance with the dryer's manufacturer's installation instructions. Where the manufacturer instructions do not specify termination location, the exhaust duct shall terminate not less than 3 feet in any direction with openings into building, including openings in ventilation. Didn't we just go over that? I thought we already talked about that one.
Appears to be in both codes.
Huh?
It appears to be in both the IFGC and the IMC, so.
Yeah. But it's, yeah. They added it to the section 504. And yes. Section 504.8.2 amendment. Staff recommends to continue. Section 505.4 amendment. Staff recommends to continue. Page 514. Section 506.3.7. There was an exception added. Factory-built ducts shall be installed at a slope, well, okay, this is, prevent grease accumulation, yes. Factory-built grease ducts shall be installed at a slope that, in accordance with the listing and manufacturer's installation instructions. Any questions on that? That's kind of for a manufactured grease duct. Because I know it is a 1/4 inch per foot on, if you make the grease duct yourself. With this, you can go by the manufacturer's installation on the slope of the grease duct. And I do like the manufacturer's grease duct. So, page 5-17. .1, section 507.1. Smokers, is this? I'm gonna go number 4. 7.1. Yeah, okay. Yeah, this section, or number 4 was added. Smoker ovens with integral exhaust systems, provided that the appliance is installed in accordance with the manufacturer's installation instruction, is listed and tested for the application, and complies with chapter 5. That was added. Any questions? That's for smoker, commercial kitchen hoods. Section 508.2, amendment, staff recommends to continue. And section 508.2.1, that is part of the amendment 508.2. And that is it for chapter 5. Moving on to 6.4 in chapter 6, or 6-4. There was some text added to 602.2.1.8, pipe and duct installation with plenums. There was some text added at the end of this paragraph. Pipe and duct installation shall be listed and labeled. Pipe and duct installation shall not be used to reduce a maximum flame spread and smoke develop, except where the pipe and duct and its related insulation, coating, and adhesive are tested as a composite assembly in accordance with section 602.2.1.7. Any questions on that? Just to make sure that everything is listed. Section 60, page 6-12. Section 607.5.5. Shaft enclosures. This is about subduct. Shaft enclosures, penetrations. This is okay. Shaft enclosures that are permitted to be permitted by or penetrated by ducts and air transfer openings shall be protected with listing fire and smoke dampers installed in accordance with their listings. That's 507.5.5. Exceptions, and this exception was added 1.1 point. Steel exhaust subducts having a wall thickness of not less than 22 gauge vertical in the exhaust shaft, and the exhaust fan is installed at the upper terminus of the shaft that is powered continuously in accordance with the section 909.11 of the International Building Code, so as to maintain a continuous airflow upward to the outdoors. And that's a subduct. Do you guys have any questions on subducts? That's in lieu of fire smoke dampers or fire dampers. Page 614. 608.1 balancing page. It was this section was moved from 403.3.1.5. So that was all that was done with that. Section 701.2. That's the end of chapter 6. Chapter 7. No significant changes in chapter 7. And yeah, there's not much to chapter 7. We're into chapter 8. Page.
Kevin,
Yeah.
did we miss an amendment in chapter 7?
I don't see. See, I've got this on letterhead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's hard to see. It's 701.2 is hereby. That's the amendment for 701.2 for attic spaces, which shall not be used for combustion air. It has to be ducted through the attic space. That is the same with chapter 5. There's an amendment on that, but otherwise, no significant changes with chapter 7. There's not much on there. We were chapter 8, page 8-2. There's a new section. Section 801 point. I got a typo here. Point 21. Yeah, this section was added. Oil fire appliance shall be equipped with a device that will stop burner operation in the event that the venting system is obstructed. Such devices shall have a manual reset and shall be installed in accordance with the manufacturer's installation instructions. That's all I have for chapter 8.
Hey, Chris, I need to take off a couple minutes early. If I leave right now, can this still continue on since we still have a quorum yet? Is that fine?
Yeah, I think so.
That way they can still go the last 8 minutes here. I just gotta get to a meeting.
Right. Yeah, I think you still have a quorum, so I think we're still okay.
Okay, thank you.
Chapter 9. Section 908.5, amendment, staff recommends to continue. Page 9-4. Section 920.4. Uh, 920.4, this section was added in groups 1 and 2, and ambulatory care facilities, suspended type unit heaters are prohibited in corridors, exit access stairway and ramps, and patients' sleeping areas. Otherwise, no unit heaters installed in those locations. Page, yeah, next page, 9-5. Section 929. 929.1. Unvented alcohol fuel burning decorative appliances shall be listed and labeled in accordance with the UL 1370 and shall be installed in accordance with conditions of the listing, manufacturer's installation instructions, and chapter 3. That's all we got with that. That's it with section 9 or chapter 9. Section, we're chapter 10. Section 1006.6, amendment, continue. Staff recommends to continue with that. Yeah, we're almost done here. And under the letterhead again, section 1007.2. It's an amendment that staff recommends to continue. Section 1008.2, amendment, staff recommends to continue that. It's just some added North Dakota. No other significant changes in chapter 10. And we're in chapter 11. Chapter 11 is, this is the end of I'll just here, I'm gonna go to chapter, well, yeah, chapter 12, okay. No, chapter 11. The rewrite of sections 1107, it recognizes the existing text and updated previous and have not changed in any, well, this whole section, this chapter has been rewritten and it hasn't been updated in years is what the deal is with this, and there are many new topics in this in section 1107 through 1110.
Did we skip over 1104 and 1105?
What's say that again? I'm sorry.
Did we skip over 1104 and 1105?
1104. Yes, I did amendment. Yes, I'm sorry. I was just getting to, yeah. I'm sorry. 1104.2 amendment. Staff recommends continue that. That's machinery rooms. And this is a new 1105.9 means of egress. That would be page 1111. Yeah, what's it? Let's see. Means we egress machinery rooms larger than 1,000 square feet shall have not less than 2 exits or exits access doors, where 2 exit access doors are required. One such doorway is permitted to be served by a fixed ladder or an alternative tread device. Access doors shall be separated by the horizontal distance equal to the half or the maximum horizontal dimensions of the room. All portions of the machinery room shall be within 150 feet of an exit of the access door. An increase in exit access travel distance is permitted in accordance with section 1017.1 an international building code. Exit access doors shall swing in the direction of the access travel and shall be equipped with panic hardware regardless of the occupant load serving exit and exit access doorways shall be lidded, shall be tight fitting and self-closing. Sorry about that. Yeah. And then we go to section 1107, pipe material. That's where we come, that's where, you know, there's significant changes in this whole chapter. And, really a bunch of experts came in and rewrote this whole section. I don't know if we want to get into that section or we're adopting it as is. We would like to anyway. So
I think we're fine with that. If you just
Yeah.
want to talk about what's in 1208 and
yeah,
we'll
12.
wrap it up
Yeah.
at the time.
They rewrote the whole section. But, yeah, 1208.1 amendment. Staff recommends to continue. And that's all we got for 1208. There are no significant changes to speak of. And if you, that's all I have. If you guys have any questions or.
Any questions for Kevin? No, thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a nice day. Enjoy your lunch.
Do we have any staff reports? Not seeing any. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Thank you.